When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Every Who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton, but where to get great prices on gifts they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one Who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and no prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as Who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
Welcome to Horror Bytes on Safe Room, a show where we discuss the smaller scares and teenier terrors available to play on your gaming devices. I'm Neil Bolt, and as ever, I'm joined by my co-host Jay Grieger. How are you doing, Jay?
I'm doing well. It's our favorite time of the year.
Yes. As without the preamble for this time, it is the last Horror Bytes of the year, which of course means we go back and pick a selection from the ones we've covered this year that we really, really enjoyed. I will have 5 picks. Jay will have 5 picks. There may be crossover. We don't ever tell each other what we pick in these lists, which just probably makes it more fun when we get to them and go, oh, yeah, you go. But we'll avoid that here by not having a ranking. It would just be like, game comes up and we both got it. Fine, we'll both talk about it. Generally, we're allowed to pick anything we've covered in Horror Bytes. As a rule, we tend to veer more to stuff that is like a fully formed game, so not so much demos and things like that, which is fine. But like, you can pick whatever you like in this format. But that if you're wondering why we didn't pick certain games, and it's usually because they are a demo or some such. So Jay, it's been another year of mini wonders, and we've definitely had a theme this year in both sections, I'd say, in terms of mainline episodes and in Horror Bytes episodes, which is point and click style games, obviously. And I suppose, weirdly, I don't know if I've got that much in my list in that regard. I think I've got the other side of what we're talking about normally with that is like the visual novel stuff, which was also quite prevalent. So yeah, I'm just pulling rank here, being as I host this one, and saying, so I'm just going to start with Within, which I think we covered, when was it? A couple of months ago now?
Yeah, a few months.
But yeah, the thing is basically a Brian Punk visual novel horror game, and it is by, was it Lemon Inc? That was it. Sorry. Mm-hmm. I had the name I thought typed up, and there it wasn't, as always. I mean, it's delightfully unpleasant in terms of how it looks, with like the artwork that's done in that. But it has this narrative to match, and I think the general concept of it being, you're trapped inside a whale, and that's terrifying anyways. But in here with this fucked up ecosystem, it has created these equally fucked up inhabitants, and that's the cool thing about it on this small scale, that you have all these like weird and wonderful characters that look off-putting in the way that they are supposed to, I think, with this game. And visual novels are a fun time for me most of the time. They usually follow a fairly simple formula, made famous by some of the bigger examples of in the field, but this with this hand-drawn art and it being very distinct, it's very, I think it's like a bile yellow, is the sort of colouring that sort of inhabits most of the things here. But like the drawings and the descriptive work do such wonders in terms of like building up a sense of place, like that. Which, when it is just inside a whale like that, but obviously with this slightly sort of supernatural edge to it, if you will, like, it really changed what could have been, a very interesting idea into something that looked really magical for what it was.
Yeah, that was on my list as well.
There
And
you
that
go.
was because of the fact that, like you'd said, the ecosystems that kind of like crop up in a very organic way for that world, right? The fact you're exploring this like dying whale body in search of your family. And it's like, yeah, he's not only swallows families, but he swallows other people and, people stranded at sea and whatnot. And really what I think this did the best job of was sort of like illustrating the various types of survivors that you'd come across, right? So you've got like a fellow shipwrecked person. You see how they're sort of like picking up the pieces of their life, so to speak, and just like the little details that give more credence to these characters. Like that guy's only way of getting news is newspapers or messages in a bottle that the whale swallows, and that's his kind of like only view of the outside world. Likewise, the different types of people that crop up within that ecosystem, it's like, yeah, not everybody is a sane survivor. Some people, lose their minds. And what do when that happens? They start a cult that worships a whale fetus. Like there's just this like really cool spectrum of different characters that you meet, different creatures that you might meet, and seeing how they react and respond to this, what is ultimately like a dire situation, but people make the best out of a bad situation. And I think the creativity that goes into that and having the characters really be representative of this world ultimately is what allows us to work so well. Likewise, the art is fantastic in this, I think, from the sort of landscapes within the whale and also the character portraits that pop up when a character's speaking. So yeah, within, it was funny briefly stumbling on like what the developer name was, because when I went back to look at the page, this is one of those games where it was not only made for a game jam, but I think there's like 12 or more people that were involved in creating this. So like it's a substantial team behind this, and that really shows in a year that had terrific visual novels. This is one that it's there's no question why this stood out to us, and I'm not surprised that you started off our episode with this, because it was quite strong.
Yeah, very much so. So, yeah, I suppose it's your pick next.
Yeah, well, if you're going to kick things off with the visual novel side of things, I will kick things off with our second love of genre that was mostly in Horror Bytes this year, which is point and click adventures. So there's nowhere else for me to begin than with Snarl from a developer and friend of the show, Beyond Booleans, which this was one that I think, I'm not sure, did you get around to this or no?
Can't remember. I didn't. It wasn't on my list. That much I know. So on this
sure. I think that this was one that I had picked, and then you had missed a recording for some reason or another, and then we didn't get to actually cover it for the show. But this was one that I really, really loved because of the fact that it was an example of what we already love about Jake's work, but at the same time, like you can start to see him pushing himself in some new directions in terms of like expanding the experience. So for Snarl, it's focused on two detectives that are having this late night reflection on a case at a Massachusetts diner, and then an injured man and his son kind of burst into the diner and intertwine their lives and the lives of the patrons that are stuck there into this like cosmic horror story. So what is always a factor of Beyond Booleans games that we really enjoy, really fantastic prose, right? A really smart understanding of genre, an ability to write characters in a way that makes them relatable or believable. And that's no different here. I think that, the single location setting, while you and I are like obviously fans of that aspect, some people might say, well, that sounds a little restrictive, but that's where, the cosmic horror nature of it comes into place. So while it might be single location, it has an otherworldly sort of bending of reality to it that's really fantastic. And I think what I was alluding to there earlier about, pushing him further in terms of like what he already does well, what he can expand on from a gameplay side of things. There's one little instance in this when, your party has basically been transported to this other realm of existence, and you have this dog that's with you, and the dog is able to, when he moves around an environment, you can like call the dog over. The dog where he's standing gives you a view of like the real world, which sounds very
Yeah.
vague and strange, but like that's your link to the real world. So like that comes into play with puzzle solving. So if the dog stands in one area, that might correlate with what the reality of that area is. Something will appear from the real world into this cosmic horror world. So like little touches like that, I think, do a really great job of like further showcasing what we love so much about these games, but at the same time, like seeing what might be possible in the future for these, because it's notable that, they've released Carnival, which we reviewed and also chatted with the developer about and really dug. And then with something like Snarl, that's a free point and click adventure. I think it's like, it took me about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, on itch. You still get to see like flexing new muscles in various ways that could later inform another project. So this was definitely one that I think everybody should check out. And it's, furthermore, an example of what makes these games so great and why, we're such big fans of Jake's work. And that's not just to say because there might be a safe room Easter egg in Snarl somewhere, but that's not the only reason I got added to my list.
Yeah, that was all I remember seeing of it is when you messaged me with that. I remember, but it's like, but this is the prequel to Abscission and Tifa Glass as well, isn't it? So in terms of what it's called, so which is cool because we love those games anyway. But yeah, that'll have to be something I play in our little break time, definitely, because I love the sort of universe created with those games. So yeah, nice pick. And there you go. So unexpected that I hadn't played it. There you go, which is a rarity with this one. So I will come back with one of my picks then, and I went with Plot Feed, which was Mind8's interactive fiction, which means a lot of things, but as the way it is done, it is kind of pushing the boundaries of what would constitute a video game, I suppose. But personally, I don't care because I think it's engrossing in a way that only a video game can be. It's basically this discordant ode to channel hopping. We've had games like Nightmare Zapping, but before, which did the same sort of thing in terms of like just creating a certain era and a certain feeling. This kind of does it on multiple levels because I think it reminds me of like Flash experiments, novelty web pages, and late night TV of the early 2000s. All three of those things in the early 2000s. And of course, anyone that knows me and this show will know that that's a very particular set of itches that I like having scratched. And it's just the very basic nature of it, but the little changes that come into it, like you can come back to a channel and find something's different information. It's not quite as like built out as like Nightmare Zapping was, where they were kind of like little playable chunks and highly animated. It's basically a conglomeration of images and text that occasionally changes, but it's the overall vibe of it, I think, that really helps, like that. And it's just so unique in what it's doing in that it's very hard to sort of go into and like talk about too much because it is more of an experience than anything else. And I always like to liken these things to being like little simulators. It is a little simulator of being in the early 2000s and like messing around on the internet and channel hopping online, if you will, almost. Like it is like some sort of fever dream of those things mushed together, like the old, all memories in one. And for that reason, I think that's why it stuck with me for this year.
Yeah, that was one of those that I couldn't personally relate to in that regard, but I think that makes it even more of a testament of the ability to capture what was special about sort of a bygone era almost, right? And make it so that way it could be enjoyable for people that maybe didn't themselves live through that sort of experience with TV or whatnot, but at the same time, like you can still capture that feel and that vibe.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that that was what was so strong about that overall experience. And at the end of the day, anything that can blend sort of humor, also like dark humor, with some instances of like forebodingness is one of those things that like shows a good tonal variety. So at the end of the day, I think that that ultimately is something that that game can be praised for as well. And there's just something about that overall sort of like presentation that I find to be, I don't know, a little disconcerting. So it does a good job ultimately, I think, of presenting something that again is a little bit of a time capsule, entertains, but at the same time, it's just like, something seems a little off here. But
Yes.
that was definitely a good one.
Cool. So yeah, on to you again.
All right, I'm going to give us a brief reprieve from point and click adventures, but who's to say we won't return to that soon? But my next pick is going to be Split from Mike Klubnicka, a developer that we have covered quite a bit on Horror Bytes.
Yes,
So Split unfolds from behind, the dim glow of a computer terminal as the player is a hacker who is coordinating with various dark web accomplices, and they're attempting to launch this malware attack against what is a very strange and somewhat vague description of a superstructure of unethical electronics. And that was one of those things that I think is right from the start is very representative of the worlds of Klubnicka's games, in that he crafts these very compelling cold worlds where technology is as responsible for humanity's suffering as it is also like the means for which the player is to achieve their goal, whether that's like escaping from a world that he's created or something along those lines. And so, Split continues that trend from a world building perspective, but where it differs and like presents itself unlike anything else he's made previously is that, as I had said, like as a hacker, this game is basically a hacking hardcore simulator. You're spending all of your time swiveling your perspective between monitors. You're quite literally anchored to your computers, and then you're running basically like executables within a computer system, and you're trying to basically like hack this device, breach its security. And I think when we reviewed this for Horror Bytes, actually, I had described it as being akin to like what I imagine being an operator in the Matrix is like, where you're just like reading through all this code, you're referencing things and you're relaying information. And so, yeah, this is incredibly hardcore from a gameplay perspective. Like the first 20 minutes of actually playing this game, I think is quite frustrating, to be honest. But at the same time, in that frustration and, sticking with it, this game gave me one of my favorite moments, which is like my aha moment on how this world operates, how, you're supposed to be interacting with the executables and the references and things like that. And, the achievements that you make in this game really sort of snowball on top of one another and make for an experience that I seldomly have in games, where it's like I felt like I was accomplishing something other than getting a sick headshot or whatever. So one part of it felt like sort of computer science 101, but in that it really does present an experience unlike anything else I played this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of my weaknesses. I think I said this at the time, where like games like this, I find very difficult to get on with. But I do believe I said at the time also that Mike's sense of place is amazing. From game to game, just like there could be a connection between each, in terms of this sort of dystopian world and like this near future sort of technology stuff going on. Even if there wasn't, like it's just each game he makes kind of has something about it that feels like it could be this alternate world in itself. And like you feel it even in these singular environments, and like in a lot of his games, obviously it's like a room or something. And yet, the right kind of details are focused on in each one. And I think this is even the trouble I had with it, I think it still is true with this game, where you have a set of tools that really immerse you in that world and make you feel part of it in the short. And I was saying before, the previous game, it's like you get the sense of like a mini simulator sometimes, like that. So this is kind of like a mini RPG in a sense. You are really playing a role, down to like you need to have this skill, you need to do this. You feel more tactile. There's games around now that kind of do this here and there, which is lovely. That kind of give respect to the player wanting to try and immerse themselves in these things. And this has done a great job in really trying to build up a world that makes you persevere. I think even if you do find frustrations in that initial sort of setup of it, as you said, once you get through that, you do feel a bit better about things, and like that's because you have been hooked in by just this world that Mike has created. Yeah, it's always good stuff, and especially in terms of his game worlds. That for such small things, he puts such character into them.
What did you have next on your list?
Let's see, what shall I pick next? I'm going to go with The House That Wept, I think, which is by I Create Worlds. My first sort of real home gaming experience was the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. So I obviously have a distant nostalgia for the games of that time. But, I can't say like any blew me away at the time because I wasn't really into video games yet. But, I recognized that console's importance, computer really, of getting me there. But now, especially with doing shows like this, older with this sort of greater appreciation of all kinds of genre, I can really appreciate the low-tech wonder of something like this, where it's made as a modern ZX Spectrum 48K title. It's an adventure game in the classical sense, and it is using the limitations of old hardware, which from last year onwards we've really had more and more of those games where you do have that. We're trying to recreate what's on this console and what you can and can't do on that console or that computer or that handheld. And this is very much with that in mind. And because obviously this is an 80s style text adventure, you get that. But the fun thing about that, and with many games that do these kind of things, is where you can apply modern touches by things that people have just naturally learned that they wouldn't have known back then. So, for instance, here, this sort of haunted house romance story at times would normally have been a very linear text adventure, which would have had you butting your head against the wall if you didn't know exactly what to do next or what to ask next. But here, it's been given a non-linear sort of structure, so you actually get this little bit of modern RPG instances in this that make you feel like you're doing a bit more, but it still feels like something from the ZX Spectrum days as well. I mean, really, games were very rigid in that just because of like the memory, just because of as a medium, we hadn't got that far. But this is wonderful for so many reasons. I think, like the fact that it's based on a book, and there's all this artwork about it, and I think there's like a film I think they did for it as well. It's all sorts of mad stuff about it, and he's done lots of stuff, in terms of like this, which I think when we were talking about it, we discussed as well. Stuff like Echoes of Atlantis and Terrific Weekend Adventure and Eclipsia, just lots of these very retro styled Spectrum games that are all like really cool and amazing. But this one in particular, it's a horror story, but in a very sort of like melancholy sense. I think the alternate name of this is The Haunting of Gale's Rest, and it's just a very classical sort of ghost story where it's more about like the emotions of the haunting rather than the doing jump scares and things like that. And it's a really fantastic project. It's got like this whole manual thing going on you can look at on the main page, and just there's so much detail to it. I think when we were discussing it the first time, like on the itch.io page is like this whole sort of a map of the place, and so you can get an idea of what to do, because obviously it's very basic. It has very basic black and white pictures, and very basic instructions for movement. And that map's like really helpful, like in a way that I hadn't had for a long time. Like obviously for good reason, because games have become more detailed, and we've done all these different things to make navigation easier. But yeah, it was like really nice to go back to that sort of like patient build up, if you will, and like get little nuggets of reward in the story itself. Yeah, and it's I think time really helped with this one. Like it made me appreciate what it was doing. Much like we do with a lot of games that are doing this sort of restrictions thing of like taking old hardware and applying those rules but putting new twists on them.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, a holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back! Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet. For a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Yeah, this was another one of your picks that, harkens back to a bygone era of development that, I personally don't have a connection with, but at the same time, like I can
just say I'm old, man. It's fine.
Damn, I said the quiet part out loud there.
Yeah.
But I will say that, like, from that perspective that I have, it does a really great job, I think, of like capturing the sort of what made that era of game development like so special, and like you can see that in the presentation of this overall package. I think because as you said, having that map there, while I think maps now, you don't even get them in games unless you are shelling out $200 for like a special edition of a game. Here, like the map is really important because of the fact that, literally you don't have one in the game, but it just helps you to like have this physical component to a digital experience, which, I had very briefly in like trying to go back and play an old Final Fantasy game as a kid or something. And it's like, oh, this came with a map. So it helps you to visualize what the landscape looks like of whatever world you're exploring. And so like little touches like that, I think do a great job of like, again, providing players with this time capsule of an experience that, as you said, like also ties into a novel and that they wrote and, maybe a movie. And I think that overall for me,
it was inspired by a 1944 movie starring Ray Milland called The Uninvited. And
yes.
Yeah, so basically, which was likened to the film Rebecca in terms of like having a mystery romance sort of thing, but obviously it was more of a supernatural sort of thing. But sorry, go on.
No, that's great insight into that because that sort of informs the player what to expect, while at the same time having a work of fiction that goes off into another realm of storytelling, if you will. And so, yeah, I think kind of like Split, I found parts of this to be frustrating once I'm kind of like learning the ropes of how you play a game such as this. Because again, I don't have that ZX Spectrum experience, but once I had my aha moment, it's one of those games that really does make you kind of like alter your thinking. And ultimately you are going to have feelings of success and, having this reward of being able to continue that, you actually have to work for, which I think sometimes these days games don't always feel like you're actually doing something of your own sort of like, I suppose, your own path to that goal. It's like, oh, well, follow this pathway, follow this arrow, look for the yellow paint on the wall. But here, like you're actually problem solving in a way that, again, might be because of hardware limitations or whatnot, but at the end of the day, like you are quite literally uncovering something, which goes along with the whole mystery haunting sort of romance angle of the house that wept. So this was, yeah, very immersive experience in one way and another.
And yeah, so we're on to your next one.
All right, well, I'm going to take us back to the realm of point and click with The Flayed Man from developer Snoring Dog Games, which was essentially point and click Hellraiser. As the player, wakens, they're naturally devoid of their memory as well as their skin. And so, they're exploring this house that has some monsters and basically trying to uncover their past, which there's a heavy indication that have done some wrongdoings amongst this world of, monsters, the dead and whatnot. I guess first and foremost, like this game just looks really great. I think, the pixel art's fantastic. There's one monster primarily that you're encountering that's basically like this big sort of like bloated creature that has like screaming faces in its stomach, kind of like like Freddy Krueger in the Dream Master at the end of that one. Like that was what that kind of reminded me of. And at the same time, like it's a small experience naturally. It's like a 15, 20 minute, it's a small environment, but there's layers to those environments, and the puzzles that are found within that environment, I think, are smart to be sort of like reflective of the world. They provide a decent amount of challenge, and at the same time, like it all just feels like it's informed about what's right in front of you, and sort of like tonally aligns with this notion that, while it is very clearly this monster-laden world, it is a world that is more concerned than with, not concerned with scaring you. It's more concerned about like the feeling that you are heading in the direction of answers that you more than likely do not want the answers to. So yeah, I think that for that reason, like it was one of my favorite point and click adventures in a year that was filled with point and click adventures that we really liked. The only thing I didn't care for was how short it was, because I could see this one being, blown up into a longer experience, and it's a world that I wanted to explore more of. So yeah, I think for those reasons, it was by far one of my favorite point and click adventures.
Yeah, and it really sort of captures like that 90s point and click era like brilliantly in terms of like the still visuals and in the general animations. Like it's a fantastic looking game for recreating that, and very mature with it as well. Like not just in the it's dark and edgy sort of thing, but just the themes it sort of deals with, I think, are really well handled, and like not your standard sort of video game horror stuff, which is always great. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, with certain games when it comes to like the main games of the year list. But yeah, I think you can excuse games if they're limited in any way when they've got such a sophisticated story. But I think this is, for a short point and click adventure, it's not too bad in terms of what it does. It kind of finds a nice balance of like keeping it fairly simple, but like having a little bit of complexity. I think it uses the story to make sure that it feels bigger than it actually is, and which, as you said, leaves you kind of wanting more. Unfortunately, this didn't quite make my top 5, but yeah, you're very right. In a year full of point and click adventures we enjoyed, it was definitely high up there.
What did you have next on your list?
What did I have next? I think I got 2 more, or have I got 1 more? 2 more. So I will go with Doppelpartment.
I don't, but that I believe was my pick for Horror Bytes earlier this year.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, but yeah, this is what I said. Such competition at this point, which is always the problem with these things, isn't it? That's the thing. Like the Flayed Man, like was so close, and ideally, in so many ways, it would be like a top 5 for me normally. But there's just so many different types of games, and the same with Doppelpartment for you. I'd imagine it's just you've got such competition. But this is a sort of RPG maker created game from AV Docile, which puts you in these shoes of a building manager in an apartment complex where you've got this unnerving situation where you learn that some of your tenants have been replaced by doppelgangers. And so given that engine, and it kind of uses an RPG framework for how it works out, you interact with the tenants, you try to determine who is and who isn't what they say they are. And there's a randomization to it that ensures that you can't just like say scummy way and kind of come back to it and try again in that way. I mean, I love doppelganger stories, so anyone that does anything decent for me is a shoo-in for a top pick. And I think the dynamic of distrust and sort of paranoia works really well in this setting, where it's quite enclosed and you have a semi-familiarity. You're not a tenant, but you are, like you have that distance of being effectively a building manager. I think that's really good. And the fact that it's not just about figuring out what if they are like some sort of evil doppelganger, but the fact you can just have normal conversations and romances with some tenants and different endings. Just the sheer amount of options in terms of how you can talk to these people and interact with them is amazing. I'm really impressed with the whole thing, to be honest, in terms of what's done in RPG Maker, which it's normally like a criticism people lay at them when games look like they've been made in RPG Maker. But I think there's a few examples this year, with that sort of style of game where you're like, come on, look at this. Like it's using all the things that are so cool about that to try a different kind of game. I like that sort of hand-drawn art for the characters is like really well done as well, where they kind of look iffy anyway. So it gives that sort of hesitancy with the characters in terms of how much you trust them or not. And it's just really having to pay attention for certain tells and things to really figure it out, and which is the basis of all great sort of paranoia in a sort of body snatching sort of environment. So this was one that definitely stuck with me because of that.
That's a great shout about the artwork, because that was the one thing that, when you talk about doppelganger games, often when you're looking at the artwork, that's one of those things that can be like an early tell almost. But to your point, like every character that you meet looking slightly off is a fantastic introduction to, a world where things are going to become increasingly fucked up. And like, given the predicament that we know about, like everybody is going to be increasingly becoming even stranger. So there aren't really a lot of easy tells, to the degree that like when you start to pick off different people from the building that are going to basically be executed by the military because you're afraid that they're going to be doppelgangers. There were a lot of surprises for me in terms of like the ones that I picked incorrectly because of the fact that I kind of thought I was going off of something that they said. And then it's like, oh no, actually that was perfectly in line with their character. And so it makes analyzing your conversations with them and kind of like storing little tidbits of information about everyone in the back of your mind as important as it is to kind of like be discerning in how people look and based upon that. So for me, like that was what I think made that such a phenomenal version of like a doppelganger game, in a game where I suppose a year rather, where, we got that game, I believe it's called No, I'm Not Human, which is all about doppelgangers arriving at your door and you have to be discerning. Like that's another game that does that, where everybody looks fucking weird and everybody has a story. And so it's more about like deciphering between things that people say and seeing how those align with what other people are saying. That really is sort of like the crux of the gameplay. So yeah, it didn't make my list, but it was certainly one of the better horror bites that I picked this year.
You have one more, I think, on your side?
I do. Yep. One left. My final horror bite for the year, and I would be surprised if it's not on your list, is going to be Without a Dawn from developer Jesse McConan.
Oh, see. Well, I didn't pick it for a reason. Like, which was difficult to say at least, because I think when we discussed all lists, well, actually, okay, this is no spoiler. I was going to put it in my top 10 for the main list, and then that became very difficult as well. So it ends up not being on either list, despite that. So disqualifying. But yeah, otherwise, I would have had it on this list as well. But yes, please go on.
Well, I'm happy that you have an opportunity to expound on why you enjoyed this as much as I did when we covered it for Horror Bytes. But this was a really fantastic game for a variety of reasons. So It's about, this woman that is seeking shelter at a remote cabin to escape her restless thoughts that basically begin to blur the lines between her reality and this psychological torment of her thoughts that's plaguing her, right? So
Yeah.
it's one of those games that right from the jump, we're always big fans of experiences where those lines are blurred. You have to begin to decipher what is real, what is a byproduct of a tortured mind. And Without a Dawn is probably the best example of a game like that I've played this year because of the fact that, it has such deeply rooted sort of like purpose in its writing. I think that a lot of times when you talk about games that deal with, dark psychological subject matter and, delve into mental health, sometimes that can feel, I don't want to say inauthentic, but sometimes it comes across like, oh, well, this would be a great excuse for what this character is looking at rather than a game such as Without a Dawn that's clearly, the root of it is I want to explore these thoughts, these feelings, maybe some of this philosophical views on life and the human condition, and then utilizing horror as the vessel for that. Like, first and foremost, the intention in exploring those is there rather than the reverse. And so, like, in that regard, Without a Dawn feels like a very personally written, visual horror novel that has some really fantastic writing in it. It has this element to like choose your own adventure, and the protagonist is having a lot of dialogue between her and her subconsciousness, which, how reliable of a narrator is she? How reliable is your subconscious in telling you to either pursue a decision or to not pursue it? And, ultimately what I think does a really great job of capturing sort of the unease of this blurring of the lines between reality is this art style, which is, it's described as being pseudo ASCI 2, which basically is a series of numbers that are used to illustrate the world. And, for anybody that doesn't know what that means, like I didn't before I played this game, just check it out on the Steam page and there'll naturally be art linking to that below this episode, because this really is a fantastic art style that I think is not only wildly creative, but at the same time, it captures that unease that, not only does that really fantastic dialogue back up, but having this world presented in a way that is strange, but somewhat familiar is, I think, the exact perfect way to be illustrated for this world. So I think in that regard, that is why I know we're not doing like our favorite horror bite of the year, but Without a Dawn is easily one of my favorite games that I played this year. And if my my game of the year list was already not so challenging to nail down, if we could do an 11th pick for that, this would certainly be it. But I'm happy to have the chance to kind of gush about this on Horror Bytes.
Yeah, I mean, the competition is just ridiculous. So obviously, by the time this one goes out, we'll have done the first half of our main picks, and that's why I felt fairly safe in sort of mentioning that it's not on there. But yeah, I forgot once I'd taken it out that I could have just reapplied it here. But then that could have applied for multiple games where you could say, well, technically it's Horror Byte because it's this long or whatever. But yeah, as we've seen before, the lines blur with that. Yeah, I mean the ASCII style art is amazing. Like, yeah, yes, I'm old enough to know what it is. In terms of like that, and I've seen it before. But I think it's just the general atmosphere. It's just this doomy sort of dream-like nature of the whole thing is just wonderfully handled. And yeah, just it's so simple an idea, and yet it's so well executed. You kind of slightly and go, well, no one's really done it quite like this, and done it this very particular way. Yeah, it's a very difficult one to sort of get into, like, in terms of like the structure, just because that's the fun of like finding out about it. It's a wonderful game in that regard. But yeah, the whole sort of dialogue being between the protagonist and themselves, effectively, and given the sort of nature of that in any of us, we can doubt ourselves, we can doubt what we think, and that's something that's in play with this, and with this weirdly sort of supernatural element to it, which is, and like every single frame of it just feels like it is just, is this part of the dream? Is this part of the dream? Is that part of the dream? It all kind of feels like that, and it just like feels like one long treacly nightmare in so many ways, but not in that sort of intense, sort of unpleasant way that you would expect. It's like this disquieting sort of thing, where it's just there under the surface of it, which, being horror fans, is quite comforting for some reason. But there you go. Yeah, like it does so much with so little in terms of the animation, and the ASCII stuff really just works so well for. Yeah, the detail that still goes into that is amazing. Like again, like you said, just go and have a look at the Steam page and just see a few of those images, and it's like, and go and play the game and see and experience it with sounds and everything else. And oof, yeah, it's just it's a perfect autumn winter game as well. Like if you just want to play it as short as it is, it's just sit down with it with a nice big warm mug of something on a windy rainy day, and it's perfect. Yeah, lovely game in so much as it can be lovely.
But yeah, that's going to do it for my list. I believe you had one left to round us out.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this, as I said, is taking this out of the equation, I went with I Just Have to Brush My Teeth by Lena Rose, which is an interactive fiction piece, which kind of has like a semi sort of realistic images made in lower sort of visual form. Again, interactive fiction, but I would say again more like an expressive mini life simulator, because it focuses basically on the ordeal of motivating yourself to do simple tasks during crippling bouts of depression. So the idea is to just simply click on these tasks to do them, but it's made difficult by this barrage of thoughts that come on, that drown out the initial focus. Ironically, that makes it a very simple but effective sort of mechanic in terms of like, this should be easy. That's getting the point across very well straight away. It's just fascinating how that works. Like it seems like a really simple idea, and it is a very sort of simple experience, but it is those sort of intrusive thoughts that all come up, and like having to click on certain ones to try and get back to the point of what you're doing. But just it's how those phrases on there that are darker or that catch your eye and really sort of replicate the idea of just like that fleeting thing that you just get in the corner of your mind. You're like, oh, why am I snagging onto that one? Like sort of thing. Yeah, it does a fantastic job of that, even though it's only just like these few sort of rooms, these few sort of experiences, and you sort of get a nice build up of the character in terms of the trouble that they feel in terms of just getting this really simple task done. We've seen good and bad experiences in terms of like depicting mental health in horror games, especially in Horror Bytes, and this is like one of the more subtly impressive ones. Like it gets to the point really well, I think, without being like up its own arse about it. It's like just very upfront and honest and very personal about it. And that is important. Much like you said Without Dawn, having that sort of personal side to it really does add something to it. And I think also just sort of mentions as well, since this was Lena Rose's debut, I think, on itch.io, and since then has made like 2 more games. There was a throwback shooter demo called Hellbore, and there was this mushroom seeking dream world game like called Red Veil, and both are like great fun as well. Like they're not exactly the same game at all, but you still get a sense of identity and personality and mood that Lena Rose has done with this game. So yeah, I would highly recommend checking those out as well.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely have to give those a gander at some point during the holiday break coming up, because this was, again, a game that's from a developer that very clearly has an intention in utilizing horror to kind of like navigate the various themes of this game. And like you said, it's a very simplistic looking game, and overall like the task or the goal of it is simple, but I think that in that simplicity allows them to kind of confront that subject matter in a way that only games can. And like, the notion that when you're standing in front of that mirror and you've got, the different words popping up and whatnot, it kind of is able to begin to make those feelings of, the tasks that you have seem insurmountable or overwhelming in a way that's very palpable for the player that really only games can do. So I think that, this was definitely another example of like utilizing the medium of games and the genre of horror to make or begin to make an experience, very real world experience, relatable or I suppose approachable for people that maybe don't have experience with the themes and subject matter here. And, for people that do, it probably feels cathartic in a way to experience it because of the fact that, that those struggles and those things are, you're not the only one experiencing them. So I think that overall, like those were the things that really made this one memorable in a year that was full of memorable horror bites for various reasons.
Yeah, as ever. I mean, we've gone back to just doing like one basically each week, but still, there's still been plenty of interesting things in that time, and that's quite impressive, I think, given like the random nature of us just picking stuff, like that, and the usual sort of chance of something being a duffer is there, and still really low, which is great. I think it's because at this sort of level and this kind of things that we witness here, we understand straight away that okay, so it's not going to be this, it's not going to be, we can't expect the same things of it as a big budget game or even like a full fat indie game in most cases, because they are experiments in most cases, and that's what we're sort of judging them on in most cases. So while there have been even the ones where we go, oh yeah, well, we played a lot of games like this one, we'll still be there to say, oh, okay, but this was good about it, this was interesting about it, different to those. But the amount of really things that struck me this year, I think, has been quite remarkable, and the difference with them, as much as we laughed about like visual novels and point and click games and stuff like that, it's like there is such a variety of things. Like, I think it's probably true as well with the mainline sort of with the Safe Room Game of the Year stuff is, I think as the year went on, you kind of went, oh yeah, there's stuff we like traditionally, and now there's all this other cool stuff that's interesting as well. And I like that for horror. It's great that we've got so much variety, and I think it's probably one of the healthiest years in terms of like variety. I think for horror games, big and small. So yeah, it's been a grand one, and we'll be doing it all again, of course, next year. But because this is our little break period, but it may be our break period, but you, of course, can help us out and maybe suggest your own sort of things. If you have a short horror game, a demo, a game jam entry, or a proof of concept that you think we should be highlighting, or even if you want to talk to us and you're a developer and you want, Jay and myself have both done interviews with developers and had a really good time with it. So please do. And if you want to, you can email us at saferoompod@gmail.com, or Jay.
And people can follow us on Twitter. They can follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Safe Room Pod for show updates and some preview content for upcoming episodes that will be released.
All right. Well, thank you, Jay, for another year of Horror Bytes. We'll be back to do it all over again, as I said. We will be back with that small-scale horror next year.
Looking forward to it.
My name is Percy Jackson. Getting in trouble is like breathing for me.
The hit series returns to Disney Plus and Hulu.
The danger is greater than you can possibly imagine.
What about Grover? Save Grover. Save camp.
Percy Jackson and the Olympians. New season now on Disney Plus and Hulu. Learn more at disneyplus.com/what's-on.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means half day, you know?
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.